So by today's warning that you saw for today's video, you would assume that it would be something crazy. And you'd be right. What is this? So in today's modern and growing society, we all go through some changes or try something different for cool diversification. And so for the past few days, not for the past few days, for the past few years, the past two actually, I've been slowly collecting what I would consider the fun side of railroading. Marx trains. For the people who have not heard of Marx yet, I don't blame you. It's a kind of a it's a weird way to describe it. It's a very unknown type of company that only a very few select know. So I'm here to give you some of that advice. So Louis Marx was a great and talented salesman in the early 1900s and 1920s-ish, and he had made a glorified empire out of not just model trains, but just literally tin toys in general. Anything from cars to trucks or airplanes. They'd be probably sold at really cheap vendors or for less than $1 in the early 1900s era. And it would just be simple tin lithograph toys that were generally available for any type of household family, and they were mostly sold at five and dime stores and most iconically Sears, just to meet strict price planning guidelines. And in the early 1920s, he got started making his own O-gauge trains, and they're very, very simple. They weren't anything too basic. It was just very small O27 negotiated tin lithography model trains that weren't really supposed to be relevant to any trains that are coming out at the time, but were very loose caricatures of them, more like Lionel's tinplate train. And when Louis Marx when he found the credible Joyline company with their cool model trains, he outright purchased them in, I believe, 1915, right around that time frame or so. And with their really cheap and reliable Joyline motor, Louis actually started changing their designs because they were really small, very, very toy-like trains, and wanted to add more realistic designs that were coming out at the time, like the iconic Streamline Mercury, Commodore Vanderbilt Hudsons, and Pacifics, and like the M10000, M10005. And then later after that, all of the previous or later years of Marx were just made with plastic trains that I will show later in the video, as well as still having the tin lithographs part of their product line, but still being very diminished. And then tragedy struck when Lionel's originally got bought out by General Mills in 1970, and then the Quaker Oats team, owned by Fisher-Price, bought the Marx Corporation because they were doing bad, and in the early 70s and late 60s, kids were no more interested in the trains. They wanted to see airplanes, cars, space, astronauts, all that, and Barbie doll stuff. So they fell in the tank pretty hard, and then when the Fisher-Price team tried to resurrect the brand with really cheap DC-powered sets, it did so poorly that that they just died. Like, it's sad. And now we're here today. That is mostly the entire history that I know about the Marx Corporation when they started producing their model trains. I may have missed a few stuff, that's fine, stuff you know the world. Just a very brief history understanding for the newcomers who didn't quite know what Marx is, but know now. I started getting actually into Marx maybe about 4 or 5 years ago when I was digging through my attic. Found a few trains. I found this Marx engine. It's one of these single reduction fat geared motors. It's okay, it kind of works, a broken unit, I think. And then alongside it was actually this Soo Line 8-wheeled flat car with the operating tilt fork couplers or whatever tilt couplers. It's different descriptions throughout the model railroading community on how these are described. And literally, it looks like a fork when you tilt it because it's on a spring to axis. And it could be able to operate with several pieces of track, so it's one of their more modern rolling stock, or their premium product line for a while. So that's pretty much all I had to get started with. I couldn't run this on my regular layout because of the, I'll talk about this right now, because of the gearing on this. These were known as double reduction, no, sorry, not double reduction, the single reduction motors. And these were very, very cheap for a lot of basic starter sets that are coming out around the time, around the beginning of the Marx Corporation when Louis bought out the Joyline product line. I don't know who from though, but yeah. So just like Lionel pre-war engines, these cannot work on any turnouts made after 1952 because of the the accommodated double reduction system. So Marx made a few double reduction engines. I think mainly just 4. I do have one of them though. I will describe that real quick. I'll show it later, but yeah. It's a 333 I was talking about earlier. They also made the 666, 1666, I believe all the E7s that were made later, and there might be another one I don't know for right now. But yeah, that's pretty much all. That's pretty much all the history for these gearings. But yeah, going back to what I said earlier, this is literally all I had to start with for Marx. And I've watched a lot of videos on people having this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, let's start collecting. And which brings us to Christmas of 2024. Where am I currently standing with the Marx trains? And my collection is pretty big. It's kind of big. It does have some whoopsies in here and there I don't like. But let's go with the engine, of course, because people like that the most. Here is, I believe it's a 400 style steamer. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah. And then most recently, I actually got a Marx 6000 Southern Pacific diesel. A lot of these bigger tin lithography diesels are pretty nice looking. They're really collectible and cherished by railroad enthusiasts of all ages, I guess. But think about this one. This damn thing doesn't like to work. Sometimes it likes to actually work normally, and then sometimes the E unit has having a hard time just trying to change positions on the E unit on the track. Next engine that I had not too long, that I just got less than a week ago, was easily my favorite pickup, and it was the 333. This thing is absolutely glorious. Sadly, it did get damaged during shipping. Whole front of the car catcher was completely destroyed and ripped off, so I had to super glue it back on. I will do a repaint for this. I want to do a Conrail, but I don't know how to do decals. If anyone knows how to, hit me up in the description list for this video because I'd love to know. And then this is the tender that it was originally released for this engine. Massive. It's not really massive. It's a pretty small tender, but damn it, it's heavy. It is easily just as heavy as a 6000 diesel. And then, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I also have the non-powered A unit with this bad boy. I'm just gonna line these up against the back of the display. And then I could consider this to be my other steamer, but it doesn't work right now. It's a 490. I just have the shell, and the motor doesn't have a pickup connection for it, so it just doesn't work, and I'm using it for parts. I had to use some of the contact brushes for other engines, but yeah, it sucks. And that's pretty much it with all the engines that I have for Marx. Not counting K-line not counting the K-line reissues, because those are technically still the same shell but different motor assemblies and new features, which I'm not going to get into. But now we're going to get into rolling stock. Rolling stock was more of an interesting collection because not only I started with a flat car, which quite frankly it's definitely unreliable now. It's okay, it's all it is, but rolling stock, I really wanted to get into the 6-inch or 7-inch tin cars. I did get some of them, but I didn't get all of them. So we're just going to go over the 8-wheel plastic freight cars because that's what I mainly have right now. Starting with a 347 for short Pennsylvania gondola. I taped up the holes inside of it, so if I want to haul gravel around, I don't want to be following it through the rivets. But yeah, it's a pretty nice car. It does have the non-operating knuckle couplers, what I talked about earlier. And then here, literally what I have for the rest of my trains is the fork couplers. Starting with the Southern Pacific caboose. I mean, it's fine. I swapped the wheels out from my Mark 6000 so I could get more cleaner looking wheels, not ones that are covered in rust. But yeah, it's all right. Even though that the smokestack on this broke off, it's still kind of okay. Next car we got is my favorite caboose, 4427 for Santa ATSF. Big. I love how small this is. It looks really, really good. It runs amazing on the rails, and obviously those fork couplers. Next car, which I have so much of, is these 2532 city service tank cars. I have so much of these in 3/16 scale and as well as this regular scale. And I'll get to those later. Next is my only Allstate rolling stock, the 5532 gondola. I just have spare parts in it for the time because I don't know where else to put them. But yeah, nothing too crazy going on here, and it's just another gondola. It's definitely better than the Pennsylvania one, though, I must say. Next is what I actually have two of these cars. Is this Great Northern 3417-8 boxcar. It's so small, it's nice, and all these cars are 027 compatible, so any size layout will do for this. Also, I will talk about this in a little bit because there's a lot more specific reason why I did this. It'll go into detail later. Here's the same boxcar I got. And then I have 4 of these cars, which is pretty funny. These 3280 Santa Fe boxcars. It's the exact same thing, but just with different printed visuals, and it's orange. Everyone loves the orange boxcar. This one is actually a bit interesting because I made a converter car for this. And what I did was I took out the rivet for these plastic knuckles, and then I put a small, I remember. I took apart both trucks on this car, replaced one with a regular Lionel metal tab because I really wanted that on this car. And then I put the weight balance made it look uneven on the rails, so I put an extra spacer and a noose and a new rivet in there. It looks it's a used rivet, but it's still worked, and it looks better now. Also, I got 2 more of the exact same car. And then we got another tank car, another tank car, but it has a different type of truck side frames. These are actually metal. And then we got this log dumping car. It's actually pretty garbage. I don't like the mechanism on it, so I just keep it closed because there's a little copper strand right here is supposed to open up the flap on the gondola, but it's getting used and I can't properly put it down, so that's why I just keep it closed all the time. Next is these junk cars I have, these 3/16 scaled chemical fuel cars, these 246s. They're both missing wheels. I have the wheels here. I tried doing some experimenting with the 333's tender, and I'll go into that later, but on all these they work. I just need to get screws for them, that's all. Before I wrap things up, I actually almost forgot to put in the car. Here's the Mark's 7-inch tin car that I do have. It's not bad. I really do want to get more of these because they're quite interesting. You know that bottom of the bones, fork, and detail-wise. But really, here's my opinion on Mark's. I feel like it's a really cool train company that definitely, if anyone wants to get into model railroading for dirt cheap, it's definitely a company to take note of and have on the radar whenever shopping for them on eBay, Amazon, or at train stores and train shows. They're definitely a little bit weird at their time because of the fact the single production motors won't run on lots of track these days, and only a lot of the more double reduction engines could put a pretty penny on the internet. But that's just because the thing I've been seeing lately is just the people that are selling them. Just I feel like they don't 100% know how much they really are worth, and so it just hurts the value of the models that are listed very badly. It really does. It's tarnishing. But besides that, I feel like it's a train trains company that definitely was considered to be the second leading competitor to Lionel in the post-war period and in O gauge, and definitely is something to get into every family. I deserve it to give you a S tier product, even though it's not realism. If you're not worried about realism, give it a go. You'll see. Anyways, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you tomorrow.